June 3, 1942. North of Midway Atoll. The Pacific Ocean stretches, vast and shimmering, under a relentless sun. Beneath it, the might of the Japanese Empire sails onward. Over 200 ships, the largest naval force ever assembled, cutting through the waves. This is Admiral Yamamoto's armada. On the bridge of his flagship, the super battleship Yamamoto scans the horizon. His uniform is crisp, his expression unreadable. Everything seems to be going according to plan, but a knot of unease tightens within him. Intelligence reports suggest the Americans know something. Those codebreakers in Hawaii. They've been too quiet. Thousands of miles away, in a basement office at Pearl Harbor, Admiral Chester Nimitz leans over a chart table littered with coffee cups. He's staring at decrypted Japanese messages, his finger tracing their movements. He turns to Commander Joseph Rochefort, the brilliant cryptanalyst whose team just cracked Japan's naval code, JN-25. They think we're broken, Nimitz says, a glint in his eye. But we've got 3 carriers. Enterprise, Hornet, and the battered Yorktown, hastily patched up after the Battle of the Coral Sea, are ready for a fight. In the ready rooms of those carriers, the air is thick with the smell of aviation fuel and nervous sweat. Pilots like Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey listen intently to their briefings. The orders from their commander, Admiral Spruance, are simple and steel-edged. Hit their carriers first. The stage is set for a confrontation that will change the course of the war. Dawn breaks on June 4th. The battle erupts. 108 Japanese planes launch from the carriers of Admiral Nagamo's Kido Butai, Val dive bombers, K-torpedo planes, and their Zero fighter escorts climb into the morning sky, their wings glinting, bound for Midway Atoll. On the island, Marine defenders scramble. Their outdated Buffalo fighters rise to meet the onslaught, only to be shredded by the nimble Zeros. Wreckage spirals into the lagoon below. Bombs crater the runways and ignite fuel dumps, sending pillars of black smoke into the air. But as his pilots return, Nagamo hesitates. A scout plane has spotted American ships. His flight decks are a scene of controlled chaos. Crews race to rearm the planes, switching land attack bombs for anti-ship torpedoes. The clatter of hoists and shouts of deckhands fill the air. Then disaster strikes. Not for the Americans, but for the Japanese. American torpedo bombers from the carrier Hornet, obsolete TBD devastators, lumber in low over the water. They are slow, vulnerable targets. The Japanese Zero fighters swarm them like moths to a flame. One by one, the devastators are shot down, plunging into the sea in trails of fire and smoke. Only one man, Ensign George Gay, survives, bobbing in the waves amid the carnage. It looks like a slaughter, but it's a sacrifice. Their attack has pulled the Japanese fighter cover down to sea level, leaving the skies above the carriers exposed. High above, hidden by a break in the clouds, Wade McCluskey's SBD Dauntless dive bombers from the Enterprise spot their prey. Tally-ho! McCluskey radios. They begin their dive. A near-vertical, 70-degree plunge, the wind howling past their canopies as black puffs of anti-aircraft fire burst around them. The bombs fall true. The carrier Akagi takes 3 direct hits. Her flight deck erupts in a massive inferno as aviation fuel ignites, launching planes overboard like toys. Secondary explosions rip through her hull. The Kaga fares even worse. 4 bombs turn her hangar decks into a blazing hell. 800 men are lost in minutes. The Soryu is hit next, twisting and burning before a torpedo from the submarine Nautilus seals her fate. She slips beneath the waves. Aboard the cruiser Nagara, Admiral Nagamo stares in disbelief as his fleet burns around him. 3 of his 4 carriers are gone. How? Only one carrier, the Hiryu, remains. She launches a desperate counterstrike. Her bombers find the Yorktown and score crippling hits. Flames lick at the carrier's island, but her damage control teams fight back with incredible courage, battling the inferno. The afternoon brings retribution. Scouts from the Enterprise find the Hiryu. American dive bombers pounce, piercing her flight deck with bombs. She becomes a floating pyre. Her captain, Yamaguchi, goes down with his ship, toasting the Emperor one last time as the waves close over the wreckage. 250 miles away, aboard the Yamato, Admiral Yamamoto receives the devastating reports. 4 carriers gone in a single day. Over 3,000 of his best men dead. 248 aircraft lost. His voice is hollow as he gives the order. Cancel the invasion. The Great Armada turns for home, a defeated fleet. On the voyage back, American submarines find and sink the cruiser Mukama, her magazines detonating in a spectacular, fiery explosion against the night sky. The cost for the Americans is heavy. The Yorktown, despite the valiant efforts to save her, is finally sunk by a Japanese submarine. 1 carrier, 150 planes, and 307 men are lost. But the victory's decisive. At Pearl Harbor, Admiral Nimitz cables Washington. Pearl Harbor has now been partially avenged. In Tokyo, the military high command conceals the scale of the defeat from the public. But Yamamoto knows the truth. Returning to his anchorage, he confines himself to his quarters, racked by guilt. It was as if we had lost the war in an afternoon, he confides. The 6 months he had promised of running wild across the Pacific were over. The pivot of fate had turned. America's industrial might, the sleeping giant Yamamoto had feared waking, was now fully aroused. Shipyards accelerated production. New Essex-class carriers were laid down. Liberty ships were being churned out at a rate of 1 per day. The giant's muscles were flexing. But the war was far from over. In August, the brutal Guadalcanal campaign began. Marines stormed the beaches of the Solomon Islands, fighting General Hyakutake's troops in fetid swamps where malaria felled more men than bullets. The waters of Iron Bottom Sound earned their name as night after night, naval battles raged, sinking cruisers and destroyers on both sides. America adapted, learning and innovating. New radar technology gave them an edge. The F-4F Wildcat fighter was replaced by the superior F-6F Hellcat, a plane that could finally outfly the legendary Zero. In April 1943, Yamamoto, seeking to boost morale, toured the front lines. But the American codebreakers who had sealed his fate at Midway struck again. They decrypted his flight plans. Operation Vengeance was launched. On April 18th, over the jungles of Bougainville, American P-38 Lightning fighters ambushed his bomber. Tracers stitched the sky, and Yamamoto's plane crumpled, crashing into the dense jungle below. The architect of Pearl Harbor was gone. Japan mourned, but the war machine he had built ground on. The pivot of Midway had set in motion an unstoppable tide. Island by island, the Americans advanced. The bloody beaches of Tarawa, the horrific mass suicides on Saipan. Then came the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot in June 1944, where American Hellcats decimated Japan's remaining air power, destroying nearly 650 planes. The Imperial Navy's air arm was broken forever. The giant's awakening, the one Yamamoto had warned of, was now a deafening roar. As the news tightened around the Japanese home islands, it was clear that the pivot of fate at Midway had unleashed a terrible new chapter in the war, one that would lead to even greater horrors. Thanks for watching. If you found this story of history's turning points as fascinating as I do, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more. See you in the next one.